Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Prime Minister Alan Shasney breaks his silence on the recent decision to part ways with international air carrier Virgin Atlantic.
Prime Minister Alan Shasney has given his reasoning behind the decision to part ways with international airline Virgin Atlantic Airways, saying it was nothing personal. During a press conference, the Prime Minister stated that although he has always maintained a high level of respect for Virgin founder Sir Richard Branson, he was forced to put the business of the country before his personal relationship. He said the decision was made in order to prevent other airlines from taking the same route.
The dilemma is not just the quantum of money, because $2.5 million is more money than we currently spend for the entire year in marketing in the UK for all of our seats. But the dilemma also is that we have two other carriers on that route. And so would it be fair to have an airline that's been flying here for over 20 years in which the government would give a subsidy of that nature to them? How do you now, and how do you deal with the other two carriers? So from a transparency perspective, it would mean that at minimum you would have to match that amount of money to the other carriers. So in the case of British Airways that actually has more seats, would I give them more than $2.5 million? So where does this stop? So I think that we would like to help Virgin. We would like to see them stay in St. Lucia, but the mechanism that they have chosen in order to obtain that support is really not going to be able to work. It's not palatable for us to be able to do that.
Prime Minister Shasney went on to reveal that the introduction of Sunwing to St. Lucia might have set off the chain of events leading to the decision to cut ties.
When it was Club St. Lucia, it was a 3-star property with a good price. And the two major tour operators that benefited from that hotel was Air Canada Vacations and also Virgin. So the fact that it's no longer a Club St. Lucia and it was upgraded and it was brought in by Sunwing, and Sunwing is a tour operator as well as a hotel operator. And Sunwing, the property in St. Lucia, it's 49% owned by TUI, which is again a very large tour operator on the European side, has changed the dynamics. And now you have Sunwing has now gone in a partnership with Rex. Not only Rex in St. Lucia, but also Rex in the rest of the Caribbean. So again, a property in which both Virgin Holidays as well as Air Canada Vacations have benefited from, that property doesn't exist. So it means that how these operators sell St. Lucia must also change.
With that said, the Prime Minister indicated that no bridges have been burned following this latest development. However, other avenues are being explored in the meantime.
We respect Virgin, and certainly our doors are open for dialogue, and we continue to dialogue. I'm hoping that prior to the June 20th of next year, that we might have found an amicable solution. But in the absence of that, we've also moved on, and that we've spoken to other carriers about increasing their airlift into St. Lucia from the UK market, and those discussions have gone extremely well. I will be leading a mission to London in early September. The Ministry of Tourism will already be there because I think that we have our tourism week during that same period, and our intentions is to meet with British Airways and some of the other carriers who we've already had preliminary discussions with, but we're actually looking to put together a significant marketing campaign. So even prior to the announcement of Virgin, London and Toronto were two cities that we believe that we have to beef up our investment.
Prime Minister Shasney said the branding of the island is critical, especially with the changing times globally. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Marlon Clovis.
The argument for reparations for slavery has at times proven very challenging, with even some Caribbean people believing it to be nothing more than a pipe dream. However, with other governments paying compensation for previous misdeeds, such as Germany's 3 billion mark paid to Israel for its role in the Holocaust, and the United States' apology and subsequent payment of $20,000 to each of the 82,000 Japanese Americans unduly imprisoned during World War II, the case for reparations for slavery is anything but flimsy. one UK university has in fact taken the lead in the reparations movement by promising a payment of £20 million to be paid to the Caribbean over the next 10 years. More in this report.
The University of Bristol in the UK has taken the bold decision to pay the Caribbean a sum of £20 million. The payment will be made to the University of the West Indies over a 10-year period as a form of reparation for slavery and an acknowledgement of the institutions benefiting from this horrific trade. Earl Bousquet is the chairman of St. Lucia's National Reparations Committee. He was quick to explain why the money was given to the university and not to the general population of the Caribbean.
I've been asked why is it going to universities and not to the regular people on the streets who need it the most. And while the question is understandable, what we have to understand is that this is a project between universities. There are things that governments can do and there are things that governments cannot do. What the universities are doing, they are in the area of education. So a significant amount of that money will be going into enhancing the educational and related aspects in research into slavery. Secondly, they are going to establish a special entity to look at health issues in particular. And in relation to St. Lucia, we must pay attention to this particular part of it because they have identified hepatitis and diabetes as two of the worst diseases in the post-slavery period affecting the Caribbean.
The exact amount of the donation is not an arbitrary figure and holds historical significance.
There is some significance in the figure, in that the British slave masters were compensated with £20 million in 1834 after the abolition of slavery in 1834. The £20 million is a figure, an equal figure, but it is not an equal amount. If it was the equivalent today of £20 million back then we would have been swimming in money tomorrow, and everybody in St. Lucia can say, well, you know, give me my grandfather back pay tomorrow. But that is not the case. And what we have to realize here is one university out of hundreds in the UK that benefited from slavery has come out and said, hello, we benefited from slavery, we want to atone, we want to pay back, and with all the money we have, we're going to put some aside over a 10-year period to show how serious we are, and let's hope that other universities will follow suit.
Mr. Earl Bousquet explained that while private institutions which benefited from the slave trade can and should step forward to make compensation in some way, the reparations being sought by the governments of the Caribbean is directed at the government of Britain.
It was a government decision to support and to implement slavery, and it was the British government that benefited from slavery, and therefore it is the British government that owes us.
Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Novita Emmanuel Green.
Dr. Jimmy Fletcher is one of 35 Chevening alumni hailed as global changemakers in celebration of the prestigious Chevening Scholarship's 35th anniversary. Since 1983, the UK Chevening Scholarships Program has supported future leaders, decision makers, and opinion formers to study degree-level courses in the UK. In those 35 years, Chevening has supported 50,000 people from around the world to study in the UK institution and then return to their home countries to help transform their communities. To mark the anniversary, 35 specially selected Chevening alumni have been designated global changemakers.
The British High Commission in Castries was delighted to congratulate Dr. Jimmy Fletcher as one of the selected few to have been recognized this way. Dr. Fletcher won a Chevening Scholarship in 1988 to study for a PhD in plant physiology at Cambridge University. Dr. Fletcher was named as a Chevening Changemaker for his outstanding work and leadership on climate change, especially as it relates to small island developing states. He was one of the main high-level negotiators for the Caribbean and the Association of Small Island States in international climate change negotiations. He played an integral role in the adoption of the historic Paris Agreement on Climate Change in 2015. Dr. Fletcher is also a longtime champion of renewable energy and bridging the digital divide in St. Lucia as ways of stimulating socio-economic development. Over a cup of tea at the British High Commission to celebrate the achievement, Dr. Fletcher said that he was humbled, surprised and honored to be named a Chevening Global Changemaker. He praised the UK government for the Chevening Scholarship Program and the opportunities it presented. Resident British Commissioner Steve McCready noted that Changemaker was a fitting description for Dr. Fletcher, who had been ahead of his time in leading the charge on tackling climate change, today increasingly recognized as the global issue of our time. Mr. McCready was pleased to highlight to Dr. Fletcher that the UK is the first country to have committed to reducing carbon emissions to zero by 2050 and is bidding in cooperation with Italy to host the 26th conference of the parties of 2020. Dr. Fletcher outlined his belief that civil community engagement, strong leadership, and setting clear targets are all vital to the global community, including the Caribbean, addressing the issues of climate change. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Marlon Clovis.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News. Stay with us. We'll be right back.